Thanks for joining me for another edition. First, for those of you who are watching this video on YouTube, let's address the elephant in the room. The shelves in back of me are completely bare. That should be absolute proof that my background is not fake. The bookshelf behind me is actually a false wall, and behind that is all sorts of plumbing. And we've had a little bit of a plumbing failure, so we have to take everything out of the bookshelf so the false wall can be rolled back and the plumbing issue solved. Hopefully that happens tomorrow. For those of you listening on the by audio on the podcast, that was completely unneeded information. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. I was at the gym a couple days ago. Now, I think I mentioned, I don't know, that I work out 84 minutes a day. That's my average. And I started doing that when I was in my 20s because I realized the mental clarity that working out provided. I was never an athlete in elementary school, what was junior high back in my day, or high school. But I did start running, in my mid or late 20s. So I have continued that, and through the pandemic, it really has been a lifesaver, and I've taken the pandemic very seriously. So it's ironic that the one place that I went through all but about 3 or 4 months of the pandemic was a gym, which is the worst place to go, right? Fortunately, I go to a gym that is huge, like 25-foot ceilings and very spacious. It's owned by a hospital, so it takes COVID and cleanliness very seriously, and pretty small groups. So it must have been okay, because so far, knock on wood, I have escaped the virus. All right. So I was at the gym, and one of my 20-something friends, which not everybody, but the average age probably of those that attend are probably mid-30s. But I was talking to her and another person, and I told her, I'm giving a workshop tomorrow. And she says, "Oh, what's it on?" I said, it's on investing and financial planning. I said, "Why don't you come? I'll teach you how to be a millionaire." She looked at me. She says, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went into some data that I opened this one workshop with, and it shows that if a person funds an IRA, which is about $6,000 a year, if you start doing that, putting your money into an IRA, $6,000 a year from the age of 22 to 29, and then stop at age 65, it will have grown to $1 million. High probability, if it was all invested in stocks. And that's assuming an 8% annual return for those of you that enjoy business math. And if you don't start until you're 29 saving that $6,000 a year in an IRA, and you fund $6,000 a year until you're 65, you will also have $1 million. Again, invested at 8%, which is the long-term average return on stocks. I think it's actually 8.1. And the first few times I cited that statistic in a speech, I actually ran the numbers before I spoke. because I'm like, really? Wow, that's a huge difference. Funded for 7 years earlier in life, you'll get the same bang for your buck out of funding it for 36 years. But it's true. You can run the numbers. And the other lady listening to the conversation was like, yeah, that sounds right. My financial planner told me if you just do an IRA, fund an IRA for long enough, you'll have $1 million. So she looks at me, and I didn't anticipate this question. She says, Rick, are you a millionaire? Now, financial professionals like myself think nothing of asking clients what they earn, where they earn it from, how much are they worth, what do they own, what's the value of their assets. I do that every day. It also reminded me of when I was in real estate. I thought nothing of asking a person that says, oh, I bought a new home. Oh, what'd you pay for it? Where is it? I also, I guess, made the great faux pas of asking ranchers, oh, how many acres do you have? How many cattle do you run on it? It was just so super common to me. It was curiosity to me. And I later learned that people can view that as an invasion of privacy. But in this case, when she asked me, Rick, are you a millionaire? The tables were kind of turned. And it was my turn to answer this question and sit with the feelings that that question evoked in me. And it was pretty sudden. You know, I don't think stunned is a feeling, and certainly numb isn't a feeling. But for a split second, I just shut down. Now, occasionally, the question of disclosing a planner's net worth does come up in conversations among my financial planning peers. You know, I don't think I've ever had this conversation with a financial therapist. That's interesting. But most financial advisors, financial planners, think that their net worth is none of their clients' business. And I've heard it equated to it's no more of my client's business knowing what I'm worth any more than a doctor might feel their college GPA is any business of their patients. Well, I get that. And would I like to know what the GPA of my doctor is? Or a doctor that I was looking at? I think it would really concern me if I found out that my current doctor barely passed med school. But it's not a question that I have ever asked. Now, some advisors think that this is a fair question. But they express concern that giving a simple answer, just giving a single number of what their net worth is, would possibly present a misleading or an incomplete picture and incomplete information, which could even be misleading to the client or potential client. Knowing that a financial professional has a net worth of, say, $10 million, doesn't mean that the person's trustworthy, doesn't mean that the person is a capable financial planner. Disclosing a net worth tells prospective clients nothing about where the money came from. I could see easily that a client or prospect may make up a story that the planner earned it. Well, the planner might have inherited it. The planner might have won the lottery. It may have earned it through a business other than financial planning. Maybe they earned it from commissions on selling high fee, very expensive, poor investments. Or maybe they obtained it even illegally. We would have to assume in the large majority of cases it was earned, but it's not necessarily true. Net worth by itself doesn't reveal anything useful about someone's understanding of money or knowledge of financial planning. Well, how could that be? They got the money, right? Isn't that useful that they got it? Don't you have to understand money to have it? Well, I used to think so. I mean, that was absolutely one of my money scripts, is that people that have a lot of money have the knowledge to be able to appropriately manage it, at least hire people that can appropriately manage it. We'll roll ahead a few decades, and I've now worked with plenty of multimillionaires who were skilled at making the money, or had a skill that just brought in money, but were horrible money managers and inept at investing it and making sound financial decisions. Many of them did not have the capacity to hire trustworthy people or hire people who were really advocates for them, who squandered their money for them. So being able to make money, to have a skill where the money just flows in, has nothing to do with the ability to understand it and manage it. And even more, there are a lot of brilliant young planners who haven't had the time to accumulate a large net worth. So they may be well on their way. They may be doing everything they can. They just haven't had that period of time for it to grow. So my hunch is that the question my gym friend was asking of me had a deeper intention. I suspect she was asking if I actually followed my own advice because, as one of my gym friends said, well, Rick, we're not, how did she say? We're not exactly young anymore. And true. I am on Medicare, right? So it's fair enough to be inquisitive. Well, Rick, when you were 22 or you were 29, did you follow that advice? Because based on the color of your hair, you ought to have $1 million. Now, I think that is a fair question. Even though it evoked a lot of emotion in me. I mean, imagine the difficult emotions that you might have if you found out that your financial planner doesn't have a retirement plan. How about if you found out that about your financial therapist? That they didn't have a retirement plan, they're a habitual overspender, or hasn't gotten around to making a will. Extenuating circumstances aside, I think I would have a real problem with that. I would have generally a problem with someone that says, don't do as I do, do as I say. So I really think this is a fair question. It's a question that comes up with me anytime I've hired a consultant in the past. Just a consultant for fill in the blank. Are they successful? Like maybe a life coach. How is their life? Or a business coach, or a marketing professional. How have they done? Have they been able to create for themselves what they are promising, alluding, suggesting they're going to create for me? So like I said, I think it's a fair question. Another concern that a planner might be asked about when it comes to their net worth, maybe a concern on the part of the prospect or the client whether the planner is financially stable and is going to be around for the future. Of course, this would be true of a solo planner, one that it's just themselves and maybe one or two people on their staff. Or a small ensemble practice, maybe similar to the financial planning firm that I own. This might be less of a concern for a financial therapist because a person hasn't entrusted financial decisions so much, or the managing of money, with their financial therapist. So I can see where it's a bit of a greater concern with the financial planner. And this is reasonable. This is a reasonable concern. During the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, a lot of financial professionals saw their revenues fall by 30 to 40%. And some that I know who did not have a business emergency reserve had to resort to laying off staff, cutting services, and in one case I'm aware of, actually closing their doors. So I think it's reasonable to wonder about the financial stability of the firm. A consumer may also want to know if the planner is familiar with their particular financial issues. And I think this is especially true of high net worth clients. They want to know, am I the largest client that you have? They need to know if a planner can relate to the complexities, responsibilities, and emotional challenges of managing wealth. And this can be pretty important to feel that security. We're talking about a sense of security, aren't we? That and trust, that I am trusting that the planner can see me, know me, and has competency, right, to handle my specific situation. So all of these questions are legitimate concerns. So knowing a financial planner's net worth doesn't in and of itself address all of those concerns. So to discover whether a planner and potentially a financial therapist is a good fit for you, it's going to be more useful to inquire of these specific questions. Ask them if they follow the same advice they give their clients, and ask for some examples. So I think this can be true of either a planner or a financial therapist. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with money. Tell me a little bit about what you are doing to secure your financial future. I think it's fair to ask them if they have 6 months of living expenses and an emergency account. I think it's, for a financial planner, really fair to ask them if they invest their money in the same manner that they're going to invest yours. Here's a question. I've never had this one asked of me. If I were to run a credit report on you, what would it tell me? What's your credit score? Wow. That would be telling. Now, it's interesting, as I say this, I don't run credit scores on my clients. But would it be fair for them to ask me what my credit score is? Well, I don't think it would be unfair, right? I am holding myself out as a planner or as a financial therapist as having expertise in this area. And if my credit score is 600, that ought to be something that any client ought to be very concerned about and probably should run away from. So like a lot of things on this podcast, I'm kind of thinking of this more deeply for the first time. That wouldn't that be interesting to disclose, for a financial therapist to disclose what their credit score was? I don't know. I can feel many of you cringing. Another question is ask them about the financial mistakes they've made and what they've learned from them. Wow, I think that's a great question. I probably mentioned it on the podcast that I think half of my job is to make financial mistakes so I can help my clients not make them. Ask them if their company or firm has a plan in place for emergency planning and succession planning if they were to pass on or become terribly disabled. I mean, that I believe is required by the SEC, that a financial planner has that plan. And also just explore with them if they can really relate to someone with your net worth and the issues you're facing. So these are all legitimate questions. And I can understand you probably are feeling some resistance right now about asking those of a planner or a financial therapist. And I understand that. I get that. It makes sense that there's parts of you that would feel you might be rejected, that they may think less of you if you were going to ask them. But they really are important. This is kind of like a couple when they come together and they don't talk about the elephant in the room, which is the money, right? This is talking about the elephant in the room with your financial professionals. So don't be shy. Ask them. And if a planner or a financial therapist is offended by these questions or dances around answering them, that could be a red flag. And if a planner or a therapist offers answers freely and transparently, you may have found someone who provides exceptional service and who has done exceptional work on their money issues. Planners, in my opinion, who share some of their own financial information, called appropriate self-disclosure in the mental health field, are clearly committed to building the trust that is so essential between a planner, a financial therapist, and their client. So, I know some of you have been thinking this whole time, so Rick, you beat around the bush. You danced. You haven't told us through this whole podcast. What did you say when she asked you if you're worth $1 million? Well, I was momentarily stunned in just in that moment. I felt that resistance, a little bit of numbness, and I processed this very quickly, and I told her, yes, I have saved over $1 million. Now, why would I do that? Well, first of all, it's honest. I have. And I think it's important that I responded to her question in a real truthful way, because it was a very good question. And like I said, it had a much deeper intention behind it. There was a part of me like, oh, she's going to think less of me, or she's going to think I'm a braggart, or all of these messages, popped up in a nanosecond. And I answered it very honestly. So I think if your planner is on Medicare and they've been planning for 40 years and they're not worth over $1 million, I think you might want to know that, right? There needs to be a pretty good story behind that, because $1 million isn't that much. $1 million will provide you $30,000 of annual income that will last your lifetime in retirement. So I hope you enjoyed this. And I appreciate all of your support, your emails. Let me know, rick@rickkaler.com, of your thoughts. And I look forward to being with you next week. And hopefully, for those of you watching, I'll have books on the shelf.